Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be looking at Slicex being used creatively, being used in an actual use. So I have two instances of Slicex that we will be looking at. This is a beat I'm working on. It's not done. I think the drums I think I might even just use a different drum loop. But I'm going to show you what I have to show you how I've used Slicex. The most interesting use of Slicex I'm definitely doing right now is the use of it for the melody and the keys. So I have one for the drums and I have another one for the keys. I played in a couple chords, I recorded them, and then I put them in Slicex. So I used FL keys to do this. So this is FL keys piano. And the intro starts out like this. So you see, it's a pretty cool idea. At least I think it is. I think the sounds are really sort of nice. This whole section over here, like, you know, that I could work on that. But over here is pretty interesting. And the way I did this is I took the sample. The original sample was not near as loud. The original sample is in a pattern clip here somewhere. I believe it's this one. No, this is triggering it. It's the one with FO key data. Yeah, it is this one. So these are the chords I recorded, and I'm using a verb send. So I recorded no verb. I'm using a send for that. One of the blessings of doing that is I am able to render this out and then just send the Slicex to the same thing and get the exact same thing without having to worry about the verb being in my chops. And I wrote in these notes using the strum tool. So if you've never used the strum tool, basically you write in a chord and you can make it strum like a guitar. And I did it for the first one. And this is how it works, right? You write in your notes, bum, bum, bum. And then you say, wow, that was kind of a cool sounding thing. Then you hit Alt-S and it will bring up the strum tool. And you see here we have it. You see it adjusts our velocities. You probably don't want our velocities quite like that. Maybe even go the other way. But no, I'll go down a little bit. So it's a really easy way. We could adjust the timing of these to get organic sounding things. And then the end time, we probably want to end at the same time. Maybe a little bit of variance. So you can make it very human-like immediately. I could play the piano, so I could have just played it in. But I'm so used to doing things like this that it wasn't that big of a deal. So I took this, I recorded it, and I recorded it dry. So originally it sounded, let's mute this like this, right? That was what I recorded. And then when you add the verb, it sounds really nice. So then I took that and I said, okay, let's drop it into Slicex. And that's what I did. And inside Slicex, what's going on here is I have it, but it sounds substantially different. That's just one part. So I let it auto chop. I just let it decide where to chop it. And then I went into my markers and I said, hey, you know, let's see what I got. And there was quite a bit of clicking, and I ended up doing the perfect all regions in the tools section. And I was considering messing with, yeah, there's perfect all regions. I was considering messing with some of the internal convolution and blur and stuff, but I decided not to, and I just sent it to the same verb the original one was receiving. So then I normalized it using the normalize tool. And I normalized, so okay, I selected everything and then I normalized it. Then I started working, right? And this was substantially softer because it was the sustain part of the piano. So what I did was I selected this region by holding control and clicking, and then I went normalize only that region. And you can normalize a specific region. For example, let's say this section, let's hear it. That's what it sounds like. And let's say, oh, I want this to be, you know, normalized, and bam, whoops, it was much louder. So it gave me a little more control over what I was doing. Okay, so that's what I did, and at the end I had this, if we select everything. So then I started writing in my line, right? And I had this, I really liked that tonal bump, 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 bump. And there was clicks there at the beginning that I was fine with when it was softer, but when I normalized it, it became a little too much. So I took the clicks out, and you'll notice that as I hit it, there is some filter movement. I decided to get a little bit fancier and make some organic movement happen. So I took the resonance and I gave it some randomization. And I took the cutoff and I gave it some randomization so that the filter never hit the same way twice. And I used the high pass on the ×3 mode, which I'm pretty sure is a 3-pole high pass, but I don't know. And so that's what's going on there. Now I had some regions that were substantially louder, right? So let me see if I can find one that I did it to. A couple of these, I think it was this one, just like a slight movement. Nah. I was messing with some of these settings earlier, but I can't remember if I kept them or not. But let's say that you wanted some to be permanently softer. You could come in here and mess with the amp knob and change some regions to be softer. So I had all this going on. And then I went in to here and I wrote out my line. So first I wrote it out at the pitch it was at. And I knew that it was a C major chord. It was the ending of the chord though. See, harmonics do weird stuff. The fundamentals though ring out the longest. So we still got the gist of the chord. So I knew that even though this was like in a weird spot, I knew it was still C major. Well, and unless I was using chops from somewhere else. But I didn't use chops from somewhere else until later. And then I came in here and I said, all right. So I took that, I cloned it 3 times or twice, 2 times, not 3 times. And so I have that. But then I put in these slide notes, these unrealistically super small slide notes. And you get the effect of it being pitched around. So that's what I did for the piano. And so I mean, I don't think it's that involved. You record a piano and then a little bit of randomization and you just customize this a little bit. I moved a couple markers a little bit to get them to sound like the way I wanted them to. But it was pretty cool. It's creatively inspiring because you write out some chords and you're like, what am I going to do with these chords? And then you just record it, drop it in Slicex. And I bounce the audio. If you're unfamiliar with that, check out that in my FL workflow series because freezing audio is super nice. And people say it's unintuitive in FL. I think that's just because people don't know how to do it. That's it. Because in other DAWs, there's like a freeze button. You create a freeze or you have a commit button, which would like freeze would freeze it, but then commit would like it's committed. So you have a whole bunch of different options. In FL, you just hit record at the bottom and hit Alt-R and it will record whatever's going through that channel. So it's pretty straightforward. I don't know. So, okay, now for the drums. So the drums, I didn't do anything crazy. I found a drum loop that I liked and it was this one. And I'm still at the beginning of this beat where you're still trying to sort of creatively root yourself in a direction. I mean, I have an idea of what kind of feel I want, especially after I had the piano. So I ended up changing drum loops, but then I'm not sure if I feel this drum loop anymore. It's one of those things. So probably do a little more experimenting. But I took a drum loop and put it in here. Then I went through, I let it chop itself. I was like, that's fine with me. And I just kept an ear out for any clicks in case there were some. Then I went into my drum pattern, which was this one. And I'm going to mute the strings. And so this is what it looks like. So I identified this one as a hi-hat. So I could go in and rename it hi-hat. You can't rename it from here, but I could if I want to. And this is something I haven't mentioned earlier. You can actually use deck B samples by just selecting 2. So you're writing on MIDI channel number 2, and you can write in deck B. But I stuck with just all on 1. So that's something that I probably would use it for just to get more chops instead of having a really long sample. But, you know, it's whatever. So the bottom one is this kick with a cymbal crash. So I was like, that's kind of cool. There's some snares. And the thing about doing chops like this is each snare sounds slightly different, right? It sounds like that one. That's a different snare. Very different snare. So you can get really cool, instead of having to go in, if you're doing this with samples, regular samples, and change every little snare, instead you instantly have variety. Like we have a whole bunch of snares and you can just go ahead because, you know, they hit it in different spots on the drum, creates super different textures, creates that subtle nuance that makes it sound more real. This is obviously chopped because things are just stopping and starting, but it's got that nuance of the different samples. So it's kind of like, did they do weird processing or did they chop it? So one of those things. So anyways, I settled on this. This was the rhythm I came up with. So see, nothing too crazy. And that was pretty much the extent of this. Now, something I wasn't pointing out here is the velocities, right? So I have some that are much higher. I brought the hi-hats up, as you can see, because the hi-hats were way too soft, and I wanted there to be some sort of a hi-hat riff going on while this was happening. This is the only hi-hat I could find, too. I was looking for sort of a different hat, but it sort of worked out. The same thing goes for the piano. Some of these things were really loud compared to others, and there was a point where I was really changing the velocities, but I guess I just left it alone here. me see if I changed anything over there. Oh, I guess I left it alone. Might go in and alter that. But anyways, you get the idea. That's what's going on. Now, you heard a couple other elements. I'll go ahead and show you those real quick too, if you're curious. I have this here string part, and it sounds like this. It's just an ARP. I tried to identify the chords I was pitching to because I'm using my ear a lot more on this sort of stuff because for finding notes, that is, because normally I have a pretty good idea of theory. So once I find the root note, I can pretty much figure out what the chord was that I was using. But I definitely did not stick to the conventional notes when you're writing music. Like, that didn't make any sense. I didn't stick to like theory. I played whatever I thought would sound cool, and then I used my ear to figure it out. Once I figured out what chord I was probably doing, then I would extrapolate, find the chord, and then I could use my theory to do advantageous stuff. But yeah, there's still a fair amount of ear work involved, and it's just some chords. So C minor, and then I settled on, what is this, D sharp, something or other, and then another C. So these are just the notes that dropped. I was like, cool. I didn't spend a long time thinking about it. And then from there, so the strings, and if you're curious, this is a contact ensemble. It is session strings. That's what it is. So this is a contact ensemble session strings. There it is. I have a custom patch for this, but I didn't use it. I just wound up going with whatever it spat out because I liked it. What is it? Staccato. I was like, oh, that sounds great. Cool. So I ran with staccato, and I don't believe I'm doing any processing. I haven't, obviously I'm not mixing yet. And then I threw in a little lead here in the middle. And see, there's so much going on here, though, that I'm not sure I'm going to keep that or do that. If I had a vocal or rapper or something, probably toss the vocals on this, really get it jiving. It'd be a lot more interesting. That's part of the struggle sometimes with beat making is like, is it like too complicated now? Is there still room for a voice? I think I've crossed the border pretty big on this particular section. And with the inharmonic stuff going on right here, it's a little tough to write a melodic line, but I knew what key I started in, so I could like fudge my way around that. And that's sort of the idea. I like the line and the sound. The sound itself, I did not design the sound. I'm a big fan of when you're working creatively to just, if you're not doing something like dubstep where sound design is like a fundamental part of the creative process, which even then it doesn't have to be if you make all your sounds outside of it and you create a cool palette. So I have all these expansions and presets and stuff. So I'll just go through, find one that I kind of liked. I like this one. I didn't like the attack on this one a lot though. So what I did, instead of going and augmenting the preset, I thought this would be kind of cool. I put a transient master on it and completely removed the attack, or at least tried to. And I turned on smooth because I liked it a little bit more. Without it on, you can hear it like fade in a little bit more. I like that a lot more. And once it gets going, it's got a legato setting, so it just blurs between the notes. And I really like that. I was like, oh, that's nice. And then an EQ, because it was pretty bright. It's still a little bright, but it's a lot less bright now. And then I sent it to the same verb send. So I only have one verb instead of a whole bunch of verbs eating processing. It's not really a big deal in a project of this size. But anyways, that's that. That's some of the ideas behind this. Work in progress. May finish it, may not, sort of jamming. The idea was just to show you some cool applications of Slicex, which I feel like I'm using in a way that is very creatively useful. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.